Gulliver's Travels. Chapter 1. All So Small. Lemuel Gulliver loved to travel, and he loved adventures. This is the story of one of his stranger adventures. It began when Gulliver boarded a ship for the Far East. The voyage was a difficult and dangerous one. Winds howled, storms raged, and the ship was pushed off course. Finally, it hit some rocks and sank. The passengers were desperate. Some tried to escape in a small boat, but it capsized, and they all drowned. Except for Gulliver. Gulliver swam for his life. Just as he was giving up hope, he saw land. He stumbled ashore and collapsed on the beach. Soon, he was fast asleep. When he woke up, he couldn't move. Not even his head. He was tied to the ground. Where am I? What's going on? Gulliver tugged his hair free and looked around. An amazing sight met his eyes. Tiny men were clambering all over him. "Hey!" Gulliver shouted. "What are you doing?" The men jumped off in fright. Some of them fired arrows which pricked his skin like needles. "Ow!" cried Gulliver. "That hurts!" What were they going to do next? He soon found out. They stopped firing arrows and built a ladder beside him. Then an important-looking man climbed up and shouted in his ear. But Gulliver didn't understand a word. He was hungry too, so he pointed to his mouth. "Hungry," he said. The man must have understood him because a crowd appeared, carrying huge amounts of very small food. Gulliver gobbled it all. Then they brought barrels of wine, which Gulliver gulped down thirstily. The people gave each other sly smiles. Unknown to Gulliver, they had put something in the wine. In seconds, he fell into a deep sleep. The people set to work. 500 tiny carpenters built a wooden cart and dragged Gulliver onto it. Then he was pulled away. Gulliver woke up outside a magnificent temple. He was in the country's capital city, Milando. The people thought the temple could be his new home. But Gulliver, who still couldn't understand them, was very confused. To make things worse, he was chained to the temple. As he stood there, crowds gathered to stare at him. Gulliver was just as amazed. It was like a toy town. Chapter 2. The Emperor. As soon as the Emperor of the land heard about the giant man, he came to see Gulliver. But they couldn't understand each other either.
"I need to think about this,"
said the Emperor. Leaving his soldiers to guard Gulliver, he strode off. Everyone wanted a closer look at the giant. But some men fired more arrows at him.
"Stop that!"
cried the soldiers, seizing the men.
"Here!"
one shouted.
"Let's give them to the giant to punish!"
Gulliver picked up one of the troublemakers and opened his mouth. The little man wriggled and howled with terror. He was sure he was going to be eaten. Meanwhile, the Emperor was thinking hard. What should he do about Gulliver? He decided to ask his advisors.
"Let's kill him before it's too late. Anything that big must be dangerous,"
said one. But as they were talking, 2 men arrived, They were full of news about the men who had fired arrows at Gulliver.
The gods gave them to the giant to punish. Here's a joker. He pretended to eat one, and then he let them all go.
The Emperor was delighted.
Let's keep him,
He said.
give him plenty of food, make him some new clothes, and teach him our language.
Soon, Gulliver had everything he needed. But he was still held in the temple, like a prisoner. Chapter 3. Freedom. Gulliver learned the people's language as quickly as he could. Then he asked to see the Emperor. "Please set me free," he pleaded. The Emperor wasn't sure.
You'll have to wait,
He said,
you may still be dangerous.
and he sent his men to search Gulliver's pockets. They found his handkerchief, his snuff box, his notebook,
What's that? Oh, strange language.
his comb, his watch, and a bag of coins.
They're the biggest coins I've ever seen.
The only dangerous thing they found was his gun. But they didn't know what it was. The Emperor wasn't satisfied. He sent a message to Gulliver.
Do you have any weapons? Show us.
He demanded. "This is my sword, and this is my gun." "Don't worry," Gulliver said. "You can have them." He handed his sword and gun to the guards, and the Emperor relaxed. But he still didn't set Gulliver free. Gulliver just had to wait. To pass the time, he learned more about the country, which was called Lilliput. It had some very strange customs. One was the game of leaping and creeping. Even important nobles played it. They had to leap over a stick or creep under one. The winners won prizes. To work for the Emperor, people had to do tricks. The top jobs went to the best acrobats.
Up, up, and over!
Gulliver thought this custom was very odd, but he didn't show it. If he was friendly, they might trust him and let him go. Every day, Gulliver begged to be allowed to leave the temple. Finally, the Emperor agreed.
Let him go.
He declared.
The giant may walk where he likes, but he must ask first, and he must stay on the main roads.
"I will," Gulliver promised. Free at last, Gulliver set off to explore the city. All the people stayed indoors to avoid his enormous feet.
There he is.
I've never seen anything like it.
He's huge.
Gulliver thought he'd visit the palace, but the gate was too small and the walls were too tall. So he cut down a tree from the palace garden and made 2 stools. With a stool on either side of the wall, he could step over into the palace courtyard. Inside, he was taken to meet the Empress and her children.
Welcome,
said the Empress. She held out her hand for Gulliver to kiss. Gulliver explored the entire city before he returned to his temple that night. When he fell asleep, he had a smile on his face. Chapter 4. War. Lilliput seemed like a peaceful place, but Gulliver soon found out it wasn't. One day, the Emperor's secretary came to see him.
We have a problem,
He said.
There are 2 groups of people in Lilliput. The Trumixans wear high heels and the Slamixans wear low ones. They're bitter enemies and both groups want to rule. The Emperor likes low heels at the moment, so the Slamixans have more power. But if he changes his mind, war could break out.
That's terrible, said Gulliver.
"And that's not all,"
cried the secretary.
"We're already at war with a nearby island called Blefuscu. Blefuscu is going to attack us."
Why? Said Gulliver. Whatever happened?
"It's all about eggs.
Explained the secretary.
Boiled eggs and the cut finger."
Gulliver was astonished. Eggs, he said. How? The secretary blushed.
"Well, many years ago, everyone opened their eggs at the big end, but then the prince cut his finger when breaking his egg open. His father passed a law at once. No one was to crack their eggs at the big end ever again. Eggs always had to be eaten from the smaller end. Lots of people refused to obey the law. They were ready to die over it, and some were killed. But others fled to Blefuscu because there people still cracked their eggs at the big end. We've been at war ever since, and now the Blefuscu fleet is going to invade Lilliput. You have to help us."
The secretary pleaded.
"Please."
Gulliver listened carefully to the sad tale. "I'll see what I can do," he said. He tried to find the island of Blefuscu with his telescope. It was easy to spot. A fleet of ships was getting ready to set out. Gulliver counted over 50 warships. What can I do against so many ships? I know. I'll need ropes and iron bars, he told the emperor. Gulliver twisted the ropes together to make them stronger. Then he bent the iron bars into hooks. Now for the next stage of my plan, he muttered, heading to the sea. Gulliver waded in and swam almost to Blefuscu. When he rose out of the sea, towering above them, the sailors screamed with fright. Many dived overboard just to escape. Gulliver hooked a rope to each of the ships and tied the ropes together. Then he hauled the fleet back across the sea to Lilliput.
3 cheers for Gulliver!
Hip hip! Hooray!
Chapter 5. Gulliver in Danger. But the Emperor of Lilliput wasn't satisfied.
I want to take over Blefuscu,
he told Gulliver. Gulliver thought that was going too far. I won't make people into slaves, he said. This made the Emperor cross. Then some messengers arrived from Blefuscu, hoping to make peace. When they met Gulliver, they invited him for a visit. This made the Emperor furious.
Rumph,
he said crossly.
I suppose you can go, if you must.
Gulliver thought he'd better stay in Lilliput and try to keep the Emperor happy. He stayed quietly in his temple until one night he was woken by shouting.
Help, Gulliver! The palace is on fire! Help, Gulliver! Help! Help!
People were frantically fighting the fire, but flames were licking the roof. Gulliver, who was taller than the tallest ladder, threw water over the palace to save it. After this, the Emperor was happy again for a while. Gulliver began to enjoy life, although he kept thinking of home. But most people were very kind to him. 300 tailors made him a new blue suit, and 300 chefs cooked him tasty meals every day. That smells good. One evening, the Emperor even visited Gulliver with his family. They all sat down to a wonderful feast at Gulliver's table. Will I ever eat full-sized food again? But Gulliver's problems didn't go away. Flimnap, who was in charge of the Emperor's money, didn't like Gulliver. He said he cost too much.
Your Highness, he eats far too much. I see what you mean.
The Emperor listened to what Flimnap said. It was true. Gulliver was very expensive. Late one night, Gulliver had a visitor, an important noble from the palace. He kept his face hidden. He had come with a warning.
Listen carefully. Your life is in danger. Flimnap is turning everyone against you. Your enemies have written a list of your crimes. They say you're a traitor,
he said.
Even worse, they say you're plotting against the Emperor. They want you killed. Flimnap wants to set your temple on fire and shoot poisoned arrows at you.
Gulliver turned pale.
Not all of the nobles want to kill you,
The man added.
Some say you should only be blinded. But even the Emperor wants to give you less food to save money. You must leave now.
Chapter 6. Escape Plans. Gulliver didn't waste any time. Quickly, he scribbled a letter to the Emperor. "I'm off to visit Blefuscu, as I promised," he wrote. Then he hurried down to the sea and undressed. He piled his clothes onto the biggest ship he could find and waded into the sea between Lilliput and Blefuscu. Gulliver didn't stop until he had reached Blefuscu. The king himself came out to meet him. Gulliver lay down to kiss his hand.
"Welcome!"
Cried the king.
"Stay as long as you like."
"I'm very grateful, Your Majesty." Walking on the beach a week later, Gulliver spotted something strange out at sea. It looks like a boat. It was a small boat, but a full-sized one, floating upside down in the water. Gulliver rushed to the king. "Please help me," he begged. "This could be my chance to go home. Can you help me rescue the boat?"
"Of course," said the king. "Take some ships to help you."
Gulliver swam out to the boat, holding ropes from each of the ships. With the ships pulling and Gulliver pushing, the boat was brought safely to shore. Gulliver set about fixing the boat for his long journey home. While he carved a tree trunk to make a mast, some of the king's men made a new sail. The sail was like a quilt made of 13 layers of the strongest fabric in the land. Soon, the boat was finished. "I'd like to leave now," Gulliver told the king. "But no one at home will believe my story. Could I take some of your people with me? I think your people would enjoy seeing my country."
"I can't possibly allow that," said the king. "But you may take some cows and a sheep or two."
He also gave Gulliver 50 bags of gold coins.
"I don't want you to go,"
he said,
"but I understand why you have to."
"Thank you," said Gulliver. "I'll never forget you all." He clambered into his boat and set sail. "Goodbye, Blefuscu," he cried. "Goodbye!" After only a few days at sea, Gulliver saw a ship. He shouted and waved wildly, hoping the sailors would see him.
"Hello! Help! Over here!"
He was in luck. The lookout spotted him. The ship sailed over and picked him up.
"Where have you come from?"
asked the captain. "A place called Lilliput," said Gulliver, and he showed the captain his souvenirs. The captain was astonished. For a few gold coins and a couple of cows, he agreed to take Gulliver all the way home.